James Carter didn't know it yet, but a single phone call on a snowy Thanksgiving Eve would save not just a stranded family, but his entire world. In the heart of Nashville, Tennessee, where the wind howled through empty streets and snowflakes danced in the fading light, he sat alone in the dim glow of Carter Auto Service. The shop, a legacy built by his father's calloused hands, was teetering on the edge of ruin. Bills piled high on his desk, their red ink glaring like a countdown to failure. Once a bustling hub of clanking tools and friendly chatter, the garage now echoed with silence, save for the hum of an old heater fighting a losing battle against the creeping cold. James ran a hand through his messy dark hair, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. At 38, he carried the weight of a man twice his age, not from years, but from the relentless grind of keeping his father's dream alive. His deep brown eyes, usually warm and steady, stared blankly at the invoices before him. He should have been getting ready to join his sister, Rebecca, for Thanksgiving dinner. Her kids, little Emma and Jack, were expecting their Uncle James, armed with stories of roaring engines and roadside rescues. He'd promised to be there by 5, but the clock on the wall ticked past 4:30, and his mind was a storm of worry. Outside, winter tightened its grip. Snow flurries swirled against the cracked windows, and the wind rattled the garage doors. The shop wasn't much, just 2 bays, a cluttered workbench, and a waiting area with a sagging couch. But it was everything to James. His father, Henry Carter, had poured his soul into this place, teaching James not just how to fix cars, but how to fix lives. "Son," he'd said once, his voice rough but kind, "a man's worth isn't in his wallet. It's in what he does when no one's watching." Those words had stuck with James, guiding him through every late night, every unpaid bill, every customer he'd helped without a dime to spare. But kindness didn't pay the rent. The economy had soured, and people were driving less, fixing less. James had already let go of one mechanic, a kid named Tommy, barely 20, who'd cried when James handed him his last paycheck. "I'll figure something out," James had promised, though he hadn't a clue how. If business didn't pick up soon, he'd lose the others too, or worse, the shop itself. He rubbed his tired eyes, the weight of it all pressing down like a vice. Just as he reached for his coat, his phone buzzed on the desk, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the decline button. Rebecca's turkey was waiting, Emma's giggles, Jack's endless questions about spark plugs. He could almost smell the gravy, feel the warmth of her little house. But then, a faint sound leaked through the line before he even answered. High-pitched, desperate, the unmistakable cry of a child. His gut twisted. He'd been that kid once, shivering in a broken-down truck on a night much like this, his father cursing under his breath as they waited for help that never came. James exhaled sharply, decision made. "Carter Auto Service, this is James," he said, his voice rough with fatigue. A woman's voice broke through, trembling with panic. "Oh, thank God. Please, are you the owner? Our car broke down on Highway 65. It won't start, and it's freezing. We got 2 kids with us. I don't know what to do." James stiffened, the crying growing louder in the background. His mind flashed to that frigid night with his father, the way Henry had wrapped him in a scratchy blanket and promised everything would be okay. He couldn't leave this family out there. "Where are you at?" he asked, already shrugging on his jacket. "Mile marker 78, near the Atlanta exit," she replied, her words rushed. "My husband tried everything, but it's dead. Hang tight," James said, grabbing his keys. "I'm on my way." He paused just long enough to call Rebecca. "Beck, I'm sorry. There's a family stuck on the highway with kids. How about a help?" Her sigh was audible but soft. "I knew you'd say that. Be careful, okay? We'll save you a plate." "Thanks," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Tell the kids I'll be there soon." The drive was a battle. Snow fell thick and fast, blanketing Highway 65 in a slick, treacherous sheet. James gripped the wheel of his tow truck, its headlights slicing through the swirling white. The wipers scraped frantically, barely keeping up, and the tires groaned against the ice. Every mile stretched longer than the last, the road a ghostly void of shadows and snow. His pulse thrummed, steady but alert. He'd driven in worse, but never with this much riding on it. After 20 grueling minutes, he spotted them. A black SUV slumped on the shoulder, hazard lights pulsing weakly. A man stood beside it, waving a flashlight, his breath clouding in the frigid air. James pulled over and stepped out, the cold biting through his gloves like needles. "You James?" the man asked, his voice tight with relief. "That's me," James replied, shaking his hand. "You Michael?" "Yeah," the man said, running a hand over his shaved head. "I'm Michael. This is my wife, Laura, and our kids. Engine just died. No warning, no nothing." James nodded, peering into the SUV. Laura sat huddled under a blanket, clutching two small figures close. A girl, maybe 6, peeked out, her wide hazel eyes meeting his. "Is our car broken forever?" she whispered, her voice trembling. James crouched to her level, forcing a smile despite the ache in his chest. "Not if I can help it, kiddo. We'll get you moving again." He straightened and turned to Michael. "Pop the hood." One look at the engine told him this wasn't a quick fix. The battery was frozen solid, and the electrical system was shot, likely a fried alternator or worse. He slammed the hood shut, snow dusting his shoulders. "Bad news," he said. "This needs more than roadside magic. I'll tow you back to my shop. Get you warmed up while I figure it out." Michael glanced at Laura, then back at James. "How long?" "Few hours, maybe more," James admitted. "Depends on what I find." Laura's voice broke as she stepped out, pulling the blanket tighter. "We're trying to get to Atlanta. My mom, she had a heart attack this morning. They don't know if she'll make it through the night." James's breath caught. He'd lost his own mom to a stroke years ago, too sudden to say goodbye. The regret still gnawed at him. "I'll do everything I can," he said, his voice firm. "Let's get you out of this cold first." Hooking the SUV to his truck took longer than usual, the chains slippery in his numb fingers. Michael hovered nearby, his arm around Laura, while the kids watched through the fogged-up windows. James climbed into the cab, cranking the heat as high as it would go. In the rearview mirror, he saw Michael's worried eyes, and something clicked. This wasn't just a job. It was a lifeline. The ride back was slow, the snow piling higher, the road a blur of white. James kept his hands steady, his mind drifting to his father. Henry had once stayed out all night in a storm like this, fixing a neighbor's tractor for free because their livelihood depended on it. "People remember kindness, James," he'd said. "Money comes and goes, but that sticks." Maybe this was James's chance to live that lesson. Back at the shop, he backed the SUV into a bay and ushered the family inside. The waiting area was sparse, a chipped coffee table, a humming vending machine, that sagging couch, but the space heater glowed red, pushing back the chill. James grabbed blankets from a closet and handed them to Laura. "Not much, but it'll keep you warm." She managed a small smile, wrapping the kids tight. The boy, maybe 4, clutched a stuffed dinosaur, his cheeks red from the cold. "Thanks," Laura said softly. "You didn't have to do this." James shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Couldn't leave you out there." He rolled up his sleeves and dove into the SUV. The problem was worse than he'd thought. A shorted wiring harness had killed the alternator and fried half the system. This wasn't a patch job. It needed a full overhaul. Hours slipped by as he worked, the clank of tools blending with the kids' quiet chatter. At one point, the little girl, Ellie, he'd heard Laura call her, wandered over, dinosaur in hand. "Are you a car doctor?" she asked, peering at the engine. James chuckled, wiping grease from his brow. "Something like that. Trying to make your car feel better so you can see your grandma." Her face brightened. "Grandma makes the best cookies. I want her to be okay." "Me too, kid," James said, his throat tightening. "Me too." Michael stepped out to make a call, his voice low and urgent, but James barely noticed. He focused on the task, replacing parts, testing circuits, double-checking every connection. By the time dawn crept through the windows, painting the snow gold, the engine roared to life. James stepped back, exhaustion warring with relief. "She's good," he told Michael, who'd returned to watch. "Get it checked in Atlanta, but it'll hold." Michael's shoulders sagged with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. James hesitated, then waved it off. Just cover the parts. Labor's on me. Thanksgiving gift. Laura crossed the room in 2 steps and hugged him, quick but fierce. You're a good man, she whispered. Michael handed over cash for the parts, then pressed a business card into James's hand. If you ever need anything, call me. James glanced at it. Michael Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Automotive Group. The name rang a faint bell, but his tired brain couldn't place it. He slipped it into his pocket with a nod. Drive safe. As the family pulled away, their taillights fading into the snowy dawn, James locked up. His body screamed for rest, but his chest felt lighter. He'd missed Rebecca's dinner, broken his promise to the kids, but he'd done right by someone else. That was enough. The next morning, James dragged himself back to the shop, the cold snapping at his heels. Despite the night's heroics, reality loomed. Overdue bills, a final notice from the bank, the threat of losing everything. Helping that family hadn't changed the numbers. Still, he felt a flicker of purpose as he unlocked the doors, the familiar smell of oil and steel greeting him like an old friend. He was sorting inventory when his fingers brushed the card in his pocket. Pulling it out, he froze. Michael Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Automotive Group. His heart thudded. Reynolds wasn't just any company. It was a titan supplying parts to half the country's repair shops. Had he really fixed the car of that Michael Reynolds? He leaned against the workbench, mind racing. Why the card? A polite gesture? Or something more? Days crawled by, the weight of his troubles growing heavier. Business stayed slow, the phone silent. The bank's deadline, December 15th, loomed closer, a guillotine over his neck. He'd fought so hard to keep this place alive, but maybe it was time to let go. Then, on a bitter December morning, everything shifted. He was elbow-deep in an oil change when gravel crunched outside. Wiping his hands, he glanced up and stopped cold. A sleek black sedan rolled into the lot, followed by another, their polished exteriors screaming money. James straightened, brow furrowing. This wasn't his usual crowd. The first car's door opened, and Michael Reynolds stepped out. No travel-worn jacket this time, just a sharp suit, exuding quiet power. 2 men in business attire followed from the second car, briefcases in hand. Morning, James said, keeping his tone even as he approached. Car holding up? Michael smiled, shaking his hand. Perfectly, thanks to you. But that's not why I'm here. He scanned the shop, the peeling paint, the rusty lifts, the signs of struggle. I looked into you, James. Asked around. People love you. They say you're honest, fair, the kind of guy who'd fix a car for free if someone's in a bind. James shrugged, uneasy under the praise. Just doing my job. That's why I'm here, Michael said, his gaze steady. I'm building a network of service centers. Honest shops, no scams, just quality work. I want Carter Auto Service as the flagship. James blinked, the words not fully sinking in. My shop. You, Michael corrected. This place has trust. Your trust. I'll fund everything. Renovations, equipment, staff. You stay in charge. Run it your way, with Reynolds backing you. James crossed his arms, skepticism flaring. What's the catch? No catch, Michael said. Just keep being you. Treat people right. That's it. The offer hung there, dazzling and surreal. James's mind spun. New lifts, paid bills, a future for the shop. But doubt gnawed at him. His father's voice echoed. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Could he trust this? Hand over his father's legacy to a stranger? He thought of Henry, of that stormy night with the tractor, of the pride in his eyes when James took over. This wasn't giving up, it was building on what his father started. All right, he said finally, extending his hand. Let's do it. Michael's grip was firm, his smile wide. You won't regret this. The men stepped forward with paperwork, and James signed, the weight lifting with each stroke of the pen. But as they drove off, his phone rang. The bank. Mr. Carter, we've denied your extension. Foreclosure starts Monday unless you pay in full. His stomach dropped. He just bet everything on Michael's promise, and now this? Panic clawed at him, but he forced it down. He'd trusted his gut that snowy night. He'd trusted again. Monday came, the deadline ticking closer. James worked alone, the shop eerily quiet, when the black sedan returned. Michael stepped out, a check in hand. "Heard about the bank," he said simply. "This covers it." And then some. James stared at the figure, enough to clear the debt and start the renovations. "Why?" he croaked. Michael clapped his shoulder. "Because you didn't just fix my car. You gave my family hope. That's worth more than money." Weeks later, James stood in the revamped shop, new lifts gleaming, the sign above reading Carter Auto Service, a Reynolds partner. He traced the letters, thinking of his father, of a cold Thanksgiving night, and a choice that changed everything. Kindness had saved him, not because he'd sought reward, but because it was who he was. And somewhere, he knew Henry was smiling. Lessons learned. The story of James Carter teaches us that even the smallest acts of kindness can unlock extraordinary opportunities beyond our wildest dreams. James didn't help that stranded family on the highway because he expected a reward. He did it because it was the right thing to do. His generosity and integrity not only saved a family in distress, but also laid the foundation for his own success. It's a reminder that life often gives back what we put into it, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Beyond that, the story highlights the importance of staying true to our values, even in the face of hardship, a timeless lesson about trust, perseverance, and the power of doing good. Meaningful message. At its heart, this story is a testament to the strength of compassion and human connection. In a world where personal struggles can easily make us turn away from others, James chose to reach out, even when it meant sacrificing his own comfort and time. His decision didn't just change the lives of one family. It transformed his own future, proving that kindness can create ripples far beyond what we see. It's a call to recognize that each of us has the power to make a difference. And sometimes, a single moment of generosity can alter the course of a life, or many lives, for the better. Personal perspective. For me, James's story is a powerful affirmation of living by what we believe in. He could have ignored that late-night call, opting for the warmth of a Thanksgiving dinner with his family instead of braving a snowstorm to help strangers. But he chose kindness over convenience, and that choice not only saved his shop, but honored his father's legacy. It makes me wonder, how often do we stand at similar crossroads? The next time I'm torn between lending a hand or taking the easy path, I hope I'll think of James and choose to do what's right. This isn't just a story about a mechanic. It's about all of us and the hidden strength in every kind decision we make. If this story touched your heart or inspired you to spread a little goodness, make sure to follow and subscribe to Story Precious. We're dedicated to sharing powerful, meaningful stories that celebrate human kindness and life-changing lessons. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Each one is an emotional journey, reminding us of the beauty of generosity and the resilience of the human spirit. Thank you for being part of our growing community at Story Precious. Let's keep spreading these precious stories together.